Preseason game number 1 is in the books. What looked good, what didn't look so good, some discouraging signs, some positive signs, all to be overreacted to when it's our only sample size we have possible. Plus, a look at the NFL and where we stand right now, the quarterback theory, and more. All coming up on today's edition of Tip Off. Boom! Kind of part of me wants to tell all those people who said that the drum roll sucks and that I should get rid of it, as it became a discussion yesterday, to suck it. Because the drum roll lives, baby. It lives. Brand new HD camera, and it's kind of freaky. It kind of bothers me, actually. I'm not going to lie to you. It seems very, very large. First preseason game yesterday. Hope everyone tuned in, heard Ron and I. We launched our brand new feature, which was supposed to be on YouTube as well. And at the last second, I got all fired up if you listen to the podcast version. It's the game recap with me and Ron. It's supposed to be on YouTube for you as well. And at the very end, I get all excited, and I flip the camera to show our engineer set it up for me, and then it freezes the entire thing, and it disappears right at that moment. So it's audio only this game, but that's Ron and I are planning to do that after every game. I guess there'll be some times when Ron is doing TV, and then I don't know how we'll do it. But that's the concept. It's another addition to the Locked On Jazz world as we continue to grow. And then yesterday I gave you that whole spiel about it's important and all those things. And we ended up hitting 31st on the most listened to sports podcast in the country on Stitcher yesterday. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Wow, this is freaky clear. Kind of bugging me, actually. So this is the first of the blurry-eyed editions of tip-offs. In other words, the Rye, I got in 3 last night, pop up, try to get this thing out before I go get the kids. No complaints, just that's a fact. We don't play till Friday, so you might get on a sleep pattern. But someone once asked me, like, what's the job like? I was like, it's just 7 months of not having slept correctly. That's the only thing that's difficult about it. Everything else is perfect. It's just 7 straight months of being on a weird sleep pattern. Jazz lose last night, 83-80, and I'm sure better analysis, again, coming from Ron, but a few things in that game. Favors does not start, which I know got a lot of ire out of many of you. And then the next note is that he didn't play very well. He made one great play, but he did not play very well. And his camp has not been, my phrase I keep using is that Favors will remove all doubt. And I'm not sure he's actually doing that, which is a little discouraging. I'm not sure he is removing all doubt right now. I think he is making Ty make the decision about whether or not a offensive force versus a defensive force, rather than having expanded his offensive game enough so that it's that he has enough offense out there. He made one really nice move out of the right block, but his jump shot does not look good at all. He banked in a 16-footer. He missed 1 or 2 others. And then he made some other nice plays, and he guarded the pick and roll well in the second half. He actually didn't guard the pick and roll very well in the first half. His first half was a pretty uninspiring performance. So that was a little on the discouraging side of things to see there. And you'd like him to kind of have busted through, but I'm not sure that his offensive game has much more than what he had last year. And then that does get into a discussion, like, is he a 25, is he a 30, is he a 35-minute-a-night player? And I think his defense is good enough that he's probably high up on that list, but it's not removing all doubt, I guess, is the way to phrase it. Now, we'll see and let him play through this a little bit, but that's some of the early indications right now that has not come along quite as well as you'd want. Gordon did not have a particularly good game either after looking great throughout all of training camp. So, again, it's one game. We don't want to worry too much. If I was going to give you something that I was really watching is I've heard so much, and I wrote about this on Locked On Jazz, was this increased kind of tempo and pace, the way the Jazz are trying to get into this offense faster and get set and really not be a fast break team, but just an early hitting team, a little faster, very a la the way San Antonio Spurs and Tony Parker get into that pick and roll at an earlier time in the offense, and then they do it with 18, 19 seconds on the clock, and then if something else happens, it can go. I didn't see those quick hitters from the Jazz very often. I don't know if they're trying to run it out of the power set where they get that first pass into the post, if they're trying to run it off a pick and roll. I think that depends a little bit on what the call is and where they're trying to go with it. And that wasn't obvious in this game. They seemed fast and they seemed rushed at times, but they and Ty's really trying to push it. Sometimes you'll hear coaches talk about it, and then when it gets to game time, the coaches can't really do it. Ty was definitely pushing it, but they just seemed fast. They didn't seem to have that organization into the game. I thought Mo got a little out of control in the third quarter, so that'll be a key thing to watch. I mean, that's where you're asking Mo. You could actually kind of see the difference between the 1-2 point guard and Mo Williams, where his natural instinct is scoring, and Jamal Tinsley, who's just a point guard. He's just bringing it up to get it into the offense. He's not trying to score. And Jamal was able to do a little bit more of this than we were able to see out of Mo. Those were the only two guys that played point guard. So the most interesting battle to me in this camp is that backup point guard spot. And Jamal had it last night, and Alec and Randy didn't play any. And when I talked to Ty before the game, he didn't sound – it was if we went big, it is the way he phrased it. It didn't sound like playing Burks or Foy as the backup point guard at this point was something that he seemed to feel was a possible primary backup option in that regard. They started Gordon and Marvin. Marvin played well and then getting some back-to-the-basket moments where the Jazz ran 3 or 4 straight plays to Marvin in the back to the basket, which I thought was interesting. From what I've watched on film on him, he has a hard time finishing those and completing them, but he drew fouls on all 3 in this case. He's a good passer out of the post, too, where if you have a mismatch and you're going to him last night, then and he's a good passer out, it may not matter that he doesn't finish a lot, because anytime you're going to him, you think you have a mismatch, probably forcing a double, and then he works it out from there. Favors coming off the bench last night meant that he played only with Cantor again. That's something that last year he played the majority of his minutes with Cantor. There wasn't enough of a real sample size to watch him with Jefferson or Millsap. He played only with Cantor again last night. Now, Cantor was very good. Cantor continues his development. He hit a top-of-the-key jump shot. He hit, I think, 2 outside shots. He had 10 rebounds. He had a double-double and really played quite well last night. David Lee for the Warriors put it on the Jazz. And kind of he has been able to do that a little bit to the Jazz recently. He gets in that matchup with Millsap, and I think they're pretty similar, and they seem to go at each other pretty hard. And defensively last night, the Jazz didn't do a great job with that, though. The Jazz only allowed 83 points last night, so hard to criticize where they were defensively. They just were not sharp on the offensive end. They turn the ball over a lot. They're forcing. You can just see it, and that's not to be worried about, or that's the reality of a first preseason game. I think every team in the NBA has been upwards of 20 turnovers in their first appearance of the year, and we'll see that. And then Friday, Oklahoma City. Saturday, the Lakers. And you just hopefully you get better, because that's the whole point. None of these matter, and you really don't want to get too big in your observations. A nice thing we did see was DeMarre Carroll. DeMarre Carroll hit some outside jump shots, and that seems like he could probably have an impact in there. And then an empty the noggin, which we'll still do for you on Locked On Jazz. I mentioned I thought the one substitution that kind of jumped out at me was late in the game. Burks couldn't guard Klay Thompson, which wasn't great. He really had a hard time staying with him on some of the curls. Picked up back-to-back fouls, and as the Jazz tried to go after the win, Randy Foy came in for Burks as a defensive player to guard Klay Thompson, and I thought that was a little revealing that Alec has not made a defensive step yet, and that Ty thought Randy Foy was a better answer coming in at that spot. But, I could be overstating that, but I thought there was kind of looked like it. I will admit, sitting there last night and watching Mark Jackson sub back into the game, David Lee, along with whoever else, he subbed 3 guys in late, trying to win a game after sticking his thumb up his butt for 25 straight games in the last year to purposely lose games so they could get Harrison Barnes was tough to watch. If you were a Jazz fan, it had to piss you off a little bit. At least it did me. That seriously, it was just ridiculous to watch them go after an exhibition game that hard, where if they'd made one of those substitutions, in any of the final 20 games last year, they could have probably won some of those games and not cheated their fans for the last 20 games. They got Harrison Barnes out of it, who looks like he could be fabulous. He does not look like he knows how to play with teammates yet. They were actually minus 17 with him on the floor. I thought there was a funny strut to him I think he's going to be fabulous. I'm a fan. But there was a funny strut to him of this kind of assumption of greatness by him that either is good because he's cocky or is inappropriate and is a sign of where his attitude and his mindset is. So that will, I think, be of interest to see how that plays over time. Those are the main things last night. We'll see. I mean, there's still development. There's just still so much time to. There's not a lot to worry about here. Last year was a little different when we had just 2 games and you had to go to work. This year, they now get 3 practice days. They will practice today, which I was a little surprised. I thought Ty might give him a day off, but he doesn't sound like he's interested in that. We'll play back-to-back Friday, Saturday, back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday, come back at it Saturday with the 20th, and then 2 more. So there's a lot of time before we start fretting about anything, make a lot of observations, but I agree that's all we have is a sample size right now, and so you end up talking about that and discussing that a little bit. Elsewhere in the NBA, CJ got the start last night for Cleveland. He played, I think he had about 10 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. And it was funny, there was some phrase in the Cleveland paper that he'll take some shots you don't quite understand, but Cleveland needs his scoring. But it looked like he had a decent day, which is good. Darren's in the headlines for claiming the reason he didn't sign with Dallas is because Mark Cuban didn't go to the meeting, which I thought was a little bit interesting. I want to take a little second today, do some NFL, because we don't get a lot chance. It's interesting. I've been a huge believer in the NFL that all you have to do is go to a conference and find who the best quarterback in the conference in the division is, and you'll find the division winner. So in the NFC East, the Giants are at 3-2, and the Eagles are 3-2, and Eli's obviously the best quarterback in that division, and they'll be the winner. And that's probably true. The Eagles are a 19-point negative point differential. That Vic has turned it over 11 times. At first, I thought that was cute because they were 3-0, and they were surviving these things. But I actually, at the beginning, to think there's a real problem for where they are and how they're playing. In the NFC North, there's no question that the Packers have the best quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and they're 2-3. Now, if we remember that they should be 3-2, but they're not playing great. They're not forcing turnovers defensively. They're just not sharp. In fact, if you look at the difference between kind of Minnesota right now, or Atlanta maybe is a better example, and Green Bay, Atlanta is just winning those games where it takes full 60 minutes of focus, and you just make that 1 or 2 play that wins you a game. Right now, the Packers are the team that are losing that game. They're not making that 1 or 2 play defensively. They're dropping a ball or two to allow Indianapolis time to get the ball back, and they killed some drives there. They don't look right in just that level of being a Super Bowl champion followed by a 15-1 team, and they just don't look sharp right now. It's as though there's just a little bit of attrition in free agency. Time has worn them out, and the Packers just that's the missing component where you look at someone like Atlanta right now, they're making those plays. I mean, they're 5-0 with some tight wins. They haven't been sharp the last 2 weeks, but they haven't been sharp and they get wins. I think that's really, quite noticeable to that. And Ryan's the best quarterback in that NFC South. They're already up. I think Tampa Bay's 1-3. They're 5-0. They've already basically won the NFC South. And the NFC West is interesting because the best quarterback is Alex Smith, and that's why the Niners will pull this thing out. The Niners, by the way, net point differential is plus 81, and the Bears is plus 78 in that those 2 best things. And I think sometimes we all focus so much on when the 2 good teams play each other, but there are some games last weekend that I thought in the NFL were really revealing, and they were Chicago's 41-3 trouncing of Jacksonville, Minnesota's 30-7 trouncing of Tennessee, and San Francisco's 45-3 crushing of Buffalo. And the reason is because what a lot of people have said to me, particularly about football, is how you play against the lesser teams really matters. In other words, if you are just a superior talent, focus, driven team, and you crush those teams, you really are proving something in those times. And so when those teams go and play, and frankly, the Giants' 41-27 win over Cleveland probably fits in this. When you go play those teams that aren't as good, and you go and blast them. Chicago's doing it on the road too, by the way. It just shows you really have a superior skill set to who you are, and I think that's revealing to Minnesota's performance. That if there's any question mark whether Minnesota's legit, I think it's answered there when the fact that they go play a lesser team and they blow them out. And we focus so much on, well, what they do against the good teams. And I've had so many coaches tell me over time, it's actually what you do against the bad teams. And it probably works for the NBA too. Do you blast those teams? Are you fully superior to those teams, not just getting up to play those other teams? And if you can do that, then you really are probably that good. And that seems to be what we're seeing in that regard. All right, I've got to go get the kids. I don't really have time to give you a quick AFC check. I do think, Texans obviously look like they were pretty real last night with their win. Though, if you consider the way Houston handled New York and the difference in San Francisco handling New York, the NFC just seems to be a great deal superior. And it's interesting to see that AFC West, Denver's 2-3, but are we really buying into the Chargers as the 3-2 best team? I don't know. That's a hard call. All right, it's the new HD cam. Hope you like it. I might have to buy a second one for the laptop for games, and that is today's edition of Tip Off. I've got a podcast with Mark Spears of Yahoo coming up this week. It's going to either launch today or tomorrow, so keep an eye on that.